The story of the Israel-Palestine conflict is a long and complicated one. It is a story of two peoples with deep roots in a land both call home. To understand this conflict, we must travel back to the early 20th century, when the region was part of the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, Jews, Muslims, and Christians lived together in Palestine, then a land within the vast Ottoman realm. While tensions existed, life for the most part continued in relative harmony. However, the late 19th century saw the rise of two powerful and competing movements, Zionism and Arab nationalism. Zionism, emerging from centuries of anti-Semitism in Europe, sought a Jewish homeland in Palestine, a land of ancient religious significance for Jews worldwide. Meanwhile, Arab nationalism, gaining momentum across the Middle East, aimed for self-determination and independence from Ottoman rule. These burgeoning national identities, fueled by historical claims to the same land, began to clash, sowing the seeds of a conflict that would escalate dramatically over the coming decades. World War I brought seismic shifts to the Middle East. The war, which raged from 1914 to 1918, saw the involvement of many nations and empires, each vying for control and influence. The Middle East, with its strategic location and rich resources, became a significant theater of conflict. The Ottoman Empire, allied with Germany, crumbled in defeat. This collapse marked the end of centuries of Ottoman rule over vast territories, including much of the Middle East. The power vacuum left by the Ottoman retreat opened the door for new political dynamics and foreign interventions. Palestine, caught in the crosshairs of global power struggles, fell under the control of Great Britain. British forces moved in, establishing a new order in the region. The British presence was seen by some as a liberating force, while others viewed it as a new form of colonialism. This period marked a turning point in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The British administration began to implement policies that would have lasting impacts on the local populations, setting the stage for future tensions and confrontations. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, a document that would have far-reaching consequences. This declaration was a letter from the British Foreign Secretary, Arthur Balfour, to Lord Rothschild, a leader of the British Jewish community. This declaration expressed British support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. It was a significant moment for the Zionist movement, which had been advocating for a Jewish homeland for decades. This declaration, while vague in its language, fueled Zionist aspirations and ignited Arab fears of dispossession. The ambiguity of the declaration's terms led to different interpretations and expectations among Jews and Arabs, sowing seeds of discord. The British Mandate for Palestine, established after the war, proved to be a period of escalating tensions and violence. The mandate was intended to prepare the region for self-governance, but it instead became a battleground for competing nationalisms. Jewish immigration to Palestine surged, encouraged by the Balfour Declaration and driven by the horrors of the Holocaust. Thousands of Jews sought refuge in Palestine, hoping to build a new life in what they saw as their ancestral homeland. This influx, however, heightened Arab anxieties about demographic change and their own future in their homeland. The growing Jewish presence was seen as a threat to the Arab way of life and their claims to the land. The British, caught between their commitments to both sides, struggled to maintain order. They found themselves in a difficult position, trying to balance the conflicting demands of Jews and Arabs while maintaining their own authority. Violence erupted periodically, pitting Jewish and Arab communities against each other and against British authorities. These clashes often resulted in casualties and further deepened the animosities between the two groups. The stage was set for a conflict that would soon engulf the region. The unresolved issues and rising tensions during the British Mandate period laid the groundwork for the prolonged and complex Israeli-Palestinian conflict that continues to this day. As Britain's grip on its empire weakened after World War II, it sought a way out of the quagmire in Palestine. The British had been administering the region under a League of Nations mandate since the end of World War I, but the situation had become increasingly untenable. Jewish and Arab communities were both vying for control, and Britain found itself caught in the middle of escalating tensions and violence. The issue was handed over to the newly formed United Nations, which in 1947 proposed a partition plan to divide Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab. The plan aimed to address the conflicting national aspirations of Jews and Arabs in the region. It allocated roughly 55% of the land to the Jewish state and 45% to the Arab state, with Jerusalem designated as an international city due to its religious significance. The plan, accepted by Jewish leaders but rejected by Arab leaders, unraveled quickly. Jewish leaders saw it as a historic opportunity to establish a homeland, while Arab leaders viewed it as an unjust division of their land. The rejection by the Arab states and Palestinian Arabs led to immediate hostilities, with both sides preparing for conflict. Violence erupted between Jewish and Arab communities, marking the beginning of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The conflict began with skirmishes and escalated into full-scale battles as both sides sought to control key territories. The situation deteriorated rapidly, with atrocities committed by both sides, further deepening the animosity. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared independence, fulfilling the Zionist dream of a Jewish state. David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish Agency, proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel, and celebrations erupted among Jewish communities. This moment was seen as the culmination of decades of Zionist efforts to create a national homeland for Jews. However, this declaration triggered a wider war, as neighboring Arab states joined the fight against the newly formed nation. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon sent their armies into Palestine, aiming to crush the nascent Israeli state. The conflict quickly became a regional war, with battles raging across the land. The war resulted in a decisive victory for Israel, which expanded its territory beyond the UN partition lines. Israeli forces, though initially outnumbered and outgunned, managed to secure significant military victories, capturing key areas and establishing control over more land than originally allocated by the UN plan. The victory solidified the existence of the State of Israel and reshaped the map of the region. The conflict also led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, who fled or were expelled from their homes, becoming refugees in neighboring Arab countries. This mass exodus created a humanitarian crisis, with many Palestinians living in refugee camps under harsh conditions. The loss of their homes and livelihoods had a profound impact on Palestinian society. This event, known as the Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic, remains a deeply traumatic event in Palestinian collective memory. The Nakba is commemorated annually by Palestinians around the world, serving as a reminder of the displacement and loss they experienced. It continues to be a central issue in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, influencing the politics and emotions of the region to this day. Section 4. 6 Days in June. The 1967 War and its Long Shadow. The 1967 Six-Day War was a pivotal moment in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, reshaping the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. In a lightning-fast campaign, Israel defeated the combined forces of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. This war resulted in Israel's capture of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. This victory, while celebrated in Israel, had profound consequences for the Palestinians. The occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip placed millions of Palestinians under Israeli military rule, a situation that continues to this day. The war also led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands more Palestinians, further deepening the refugee crisis. The Six-Day War solidified Israel's military dominance in the region, but also sowed the seeds of future conflict. The occupation of Palestinian territories became a major point of contention, fueling Palestinian resistance and international condemnation. Section 5. A Dream Deferred. The Quest for Peace and the Rise of Extremism. The decades following the Six-Day War witnessed a complex interplay of peace efforts, renewed violence, and the rise of extremist groups on both sides. The war itself, fought in June 1967, dramatically altered the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. Israel's swift victory and subsequent occupation of the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem set the stage for a protracted and deeply entrenched conflict. The yearning for peace found expression in various initiatives, from the Camp David Accords in 1978 to the Oslo Accords in the 1990s. These efforts were driven by a shared desire to end decades of bloodshed and to establish a framework for coexistence. The Camp David Accords, in particular, were a landmark moment as they represented the first time an Arab country, Egypt, officially recognized Israel. The Camp David Accords, brokered by U.S. President Jimmy Carter, led to a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, marking a significant breakthrough. This agreement not only ended hostilities between the two nations, but also set a precedent for future peace negotiations in the region. The Accords demonstrated that dialogue and diplomacy could yield tangible results, even in a region fraught with historical grievances and mutual distrust. The Oslo Accords, signed in the 1990s, raised hopes for a two-state solution, with Israel and a future Palestinian state coexisting peacefully. These accords were the result of secret negotiations facilitated by Norway and represented a bold step towards resolving one of the world's most intractable conflicts. The image of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat shaking hands on the White House lawn became a powerful symbol of hope and reconciliation. However, these agreements failed to resolve the core issues of the conflict, including the status of Jerusalem, Palestinian refugees' right of return, and the expansion of Israeli settlements in the occupied territories. Jerusalem, a city sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians, remained a particularly contentious point, with both Israelis and Palestinians claiming it as their capital. The plight of Palestinian refugees, displaced since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, also continued to fuel tensions, as did the ongoing construction of Israeli settlements, which many Palestinians viewed as an encroachment on their land. The assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in 1995 by a Jewish extremist dealt a severe blow to the peace process. Rabin, a former general turned peacemaker, had become a symbol of the possibility of reconciliation. His death not only shocked the world, but also underscored the deep divisions within Israeli society and the formidable obstacles to achieving lasting peace. Meanwhile, the rise of extremist groups like Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon added another layer of complexity. These groups, with their militant ideologies and rejection of Israel's right to exist, pose significant challenges to any peace efforts. Hamas, which emerged during the first intifada in the 1980s, gained control of Gaza in 2007 and has since been involved in numerous conflicts with Israel. Hezbollah, backed by Iran, has also been a major player in the region, particularly in Lebanon. These groups, committed to Israel's destruction, rejected the peace process and resorted to violence, further dimming the prospects for a lasting solution. Rocket attacks from Gaza and Israeli military responses have become a tragic cycle, perpetuating a state of perpetual conflict. The international community continues to grapple with finding a path to peace, but the deep-seated animosities and complex political realities make this an exceedingly difficult task. The quest for peace remains elusive, overshadowed by the rise of extremism and the enduring legacy of historical grief.